All right, everyone. It's not quite time yet. It's just a couple minutes on, but I wanted to get this going, get this started, and update Facebook. Yada yada yada. Do post, and we're gonna post this here. You stop shaking your stuff behind me. You're shaking your stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't shake your stuff. Okay, cool. All right. Let's see. Everything's good. Cool. So yeah, we're just kind of hanging out for a little bit, a couple minutes before 5, and then we'll get started. Here's Bodacious. Hey Bodie, look at you're on the YouTubes. You look thrilled. Look at how thrilled he looks. He's just he's beside himself with ecstasy. You know, cool. So let's. Hey babe, you gonna come in here? Yeah, come on in here for the intro. The intro. Yeah, our completely non-technologically advanced intro. Alrighty, so this is our first. I got to remember to look at this stupid little the camera. So this is our first live stream with the business. We're Blackland Geology and Reptiles. We are an education outreach business.
Business.
Business. So what we're gonna do tonight is we're gonna do kind of a like a question and answer type thing. So you guys can type in answers. I'll answer them live. I'll also be showing you a variety of different snakes. So right now I have my bull snake. It's actually a Kankakee bull snake, so from the northern part of their range. And this is Bodacious. He is not an adult. He's actually about a year old, a little over a year old. He is gonna be, oh gosh, probably about 6 or 7 feet when he's full grown. He's gonna be a big boy. He's gonna be a big boy, and he knows it. He's already pounding small rats. Just put that in perspective. And his head is bigger. It's almost twice the size of my thumb. It's hard to see. Oops, there we go. Hard to see scale there, but yeah, there's Bodie. Look at it. Yeah, there's Brett's thumb for scale. Woo!
And I will
Alrighty.
come in and out. Tell him I'll be in and out as you help.
Yeah, so my husband Brett is going to be kind of helping me with my critters today. So as I am talking, as I swap, he's going to help me do uh, stage set changes and stuff. So cool. I am looking forward to your questions. So I guess I don't know. While I'm waiting for questions, I'll talk about why we decided to do this. So we I don't know. I guess the long and the short of it is we're disaffected with the 9 to 5. So both of us have been in education in the public sector for
20 years.
20, yeah, collectively 20 years. And it's not that we don't like education. I love education. I want to educate people. I'm just a bit disaffected with how education, like essentially how
The ministry is interfering with Hogwarts.
how the ministry is interfering with Hogwarts, essentially. So that's real. I don't want to get into it too much, but that's really the long and the short of it. So my husband and I decided to. It's actually last spring. We decided to start up this business, and you can say it was inspired by a lot of other YouTubers that do kind of something similar. However, in addition to doing like education outreach with snakes, so we do birthday parties, or we will once the apocalypse passes. Um, Birthday parties, education outreach, live streaming now, huh?
Tutoring.
Technology, huh?
Tutoring.
Yep. Thank you, Brett. Tutoring. We do tutoring. We do tutoring in the math and natural sciences because the two of us, between the two of us, we can teach just about any topic in environmental science, math, geology, ecology,
Some biology.
sub biology, some biology and whatnot. Definitely snakes and reptiles, which we're gonna kind of poke at tonight.
This today's focus on Texas State snakes.
Yeah. So what we're going to do today is focus on snakes, really, because most of what I have right now is snakes. So we'll focus on snakes, and a lot of my snakes are Texas native snakes. So they are found in various parts of Texas. Bull snakes, actually, their range is actually really big. Like you have bull snakes are kind of like a subspecies of gopher snake, and their range is essentially the entire western half of the U.S. And then they're, really what differentiates, like, say, like a bull snake like this, a Kankakee bull snake from, say, like a Sonoran gopher snake or something like that. It's just really location, and a lot of times the patterns and stuff will be different too because of different habitats. But yeah, so that is what we're going to talk about today. Hey, Max, I see you. Nice of you to stop by. Um, so I guess what else should we talk about? Come. Here he is, my husband stuffing his face. So yeah, no, we wanted to do education. We just wanted to do education our way. That's really the long and the short of it. You know, we want to teach. We both have kind of unique teaching styles that are very off the cuff. Him more so than me. I'm a little bit more structured. At least I like think so. um, hey Craig, what's up? Oh, chatting from the Facebook app is not allowed. Okay, that's good to know. Um, we will see if we can if there's a way we can change that in the future. Yeah. So I guess while we're waiting for people to kind of filter in and ask questions, so a bull snake is, well, like all snake species, all snakes are predators. All right. And bull snakes are kind of a more of a generalist species. So they essentially, if they can fit it in their mouth or if they can subdue it, they're going to eat it. In the wild, these guys predominantly eat rodents, rabbits, mice, rats, but they'll also eat lizards, frogs, toads, like essentially whatever they can catch. And they're constrictors, so if they catch something, they'll grab it in their mouth. Hey, what's up? How you doing? Good to see y'all. Susan, yay! But yeah, so these guys will just eat just about anything. And the cool thing is, these guys are meant to be the rattlesnake mimics. So a lot of people when if a person encounters a bull snake in the wild, they have this really cool defense mechanism where they will adopt an S pose. So your S striking pose that you see like every picture. If you just search for do a Google search on rattlesnakes, almost every picture of a rattlesnake you're going to see is the rattlesnake in like a coiled defensive position with its tongue sticking out and its rattle going and stuff like that. Hey Adam, what's up? Um, it's good to see y'all. Woo! Oh my gosh, people are actually showing up and watching me. Oh my god, I'm a YouTuber now. Huh? I gotta focus. So these guys here, what was I saying? Do you remember what I was saying?
Yeah. You said that they adopt the escape post
Oh
posture.
yes, thank you. I was talking about defensive, yes, defense in bull snakes. So these guys, they actually have a their glottis. So the essentially the little part of your trachea, um, it's essentially an extent. It's part of their trachea. They actually have a divided glottis, and their glottis is also extendable too. So when these guys eat, actually, this is most snakes. Hey Max, what's up? Yeah, I know we're YouTubers now. It's how it's got to go. So these guys, when they're startled, so they have a glottis and they have a like essentially a little dividing. It's almost like a piece of cartilage that divides their glottis in half at the end. And what they can do is when they're cornered, they'll essentially inflate their single lung. So all snakes have one lung, and the lung goes down like almost about halfway down their body. And what they'll do is he'll inflate it. So he'll take a big deep breath, and then he'll just let it out, but it'll pass out through his glottis through this divided glottis, and it'll create a very loud hissing sound. And it's very intimidating. The first time I heard it, it was like, holy cow, that snake is making a ridiculously loud sound. Now he's probably not going to do that because he's pretty comfortable with me. He knows who I am. He knows I'm not going to hurt him. But in the wild, they'll hiss at you, and the hiss actually sounds a lot like a rattlesnake rattle. So what they'll do is they'll adopt that S pose. They'll open their mouth. They'll stick out their tongue. They'll hiss really loudly. They'll vibrate their tail. Essentially, they're trying to make you think like they're a rattlesnake. And the whole point of the bluff is to get you to back down. So it's like, hey, I'm big. I'm a big menacing snake, and I'm proud, and I'm quote unquote venomous. Or you want me? I want you to think that I'm venomous so that you won't bother me. It's very cool. So let's see. Craig asked a question. Joey wants to know if you can save if safes to touch snake. Okay, so touching snakes in the wild. If you know what the snake is, yes, it is safe to touch the snake. If you cannot identify the snake, do not pick it up. The reason being is, again, actually, I kind of point out, I'm going to use bodacious. A lot of snake species are venomous snake mimics. So unless you are very good at identifying like local snakes. So actually, if you really if you love snakes and you want to go herping, so herping is exploring and looking for snakes. If you really want to go and herp in your local area and interact with snakes, you really should make sure that you are well versed in your local snakes. So like that you can identify most of your local snakes, especially the venomous ones, because that way you can tell the difference between a rattlesnake and a bull snake that's just got an attitude problem. But yeah, for the most part, especially with kids, and if you're trying to instruct kids on the safest way to approach snakes, definitely tell kids not to touch them unless your parents say that it's okay to touch them. And parents, if you can identify the snake and you know 100% that it's not venomous, then yeah, you can let your kids touch it. Now, a lot of snakes, they don't necessarily like being picked up because if you think about it, humans, I mean, look at the size of bodacious. Now, but again, bodacious is a juvenile, so he's a little bit more standoffish and defensive than he will be as an adult. But if you look at his size compared to me, I'm much bigger than he is. I'm a predator. He sees me as a predator. The only reason he's not freaking out and trying to strike me and rattling his tail and hissing is because he knows that I'm not going to hurt him because I interact with him every day. In the wild, though, if you try to pick up a wild snake, that wild snake has no idea what you're going to do to it. It assumes that because you're big and because you're reaching down with your claws, your hands, this looks like a claw. This looks like an eagle claw. Your hand looks like claws. So if a snake sees you reaching down to pick it up, its first instinct will be to run away. So, oh my gosh, there's something big near me. I need to get away from it. If it can't get away, usually the next stage in defense is to bluff. So with the bull snakes, again, the hissing, the rattling the tail, a lot of snakes will rattle their tails to try to make you think they're a rattlesnake. Um, but they will, some snakes, not all snakes, but some snakes will bite repeatedly if you try to pick them up. Unless it's venomous, a bite from a snake really isn't a bite from a non-venomous snake really isn't a big deal. It's not even really painful. It's just like they tag you so fast. Their teeth are really small. So especially your colubrids, your North American colubrids, their teeth, they're not, when they bite, they just they don't want to bite and latch on and gnaw on you, because it means they have to be in contact with a potential predator for a long time. So what they'll do is they'll tag you in hopes that will startle you enough to leave it alone so it can escape. But yeah, so just know that if you try to pick up a snake in the wild, there is a good chance that you're going to get bit. Um, and you better know what it is. It also, another defensive mechanism is defecation. So some snakes will just empty out the contents of their cloaca right onto your hand, and it smells horrible. And actually, and some of them can actually spray the contents of their cloaca too. So like, if you're talking like like helicopter crapping, some snakes can do that. So just know that. Yeah, well, that's musking. Yeah, the proper term for emptying out those cloacal contents is musking, because snakes actually do have special scent glands in their cloaca. Essentially, right anterior of their cloaca, they have little scent glands that produce a very noxious smell, in addition to whatever happens to be in their intestines. So let's see, what other question? Hopefully, it answered your question. Hold on, let's see. See, Drew wants to know. Depends on the snake. Let's see. Yes, you do have to be careful. So definitely in the comment section, Max is saying you do have to be careful. Yes, definitely be careful. Again, and that goes to identification, proper identification. If you cannot identify the snake, do not touch it. That is, it's better to be safe than sorry. If you get tagged, like say if you misidentify a snake, like a milk snake, and you misidentify a coral snake as a milk snake, you pick up the coral snake, you get bit, you're probably going to end up shelling out tens of thousands of dollars at the hospital for antivenom treatments. And there's always the possibility, because a lot of antivenoms are made with horse serum. A lot of people have allergic reactions to those, and then they have to treat the allergic reaction in addition to the envenomation, which is not necessarily a good thing. So again, if you can identify it and you know it's not venomous, it's safe to pick it up. Just know that it might try to bite you. If you cannot identify it, do not pick it up. Let's see. So let's see what other questions we got. Let's see. Hey, Tiffany, what's up? Hi, how's it going? Let's see. How many different snakes do I have in my collection so far? So right now, I have 19 snakes in my collection. I did have 20. We did purchase a We were hoping to purchase a what was it? A Trans-Pecos rat snake. However, it didn't survive quarantine, and we actually only had it a couple days in quarantine, and it passed away for no reason that science can determine. So the cool thing is, I actually did preserve its remains. So I plan on using the skin of that potential. I plan on using the skin from that Trans-Pecos rat snake in education, and I also plan on using the skeleton too. You can actually soak this may sound kind of gross, but you can say if you want to taxidermy a snake skeleton. It's a pain in the butt because there's a lot of bones. Snake can have each vertebrae, so snakes can have hundreds of vertebrae. Humans only have 33 vertebrae. Snakes can have upwards of somewhere between 120 and 500, depending on the species. And each of those vertebrae has two ribs that kind of wrap around most of the body. So now imagine you putting that into a bucket of water and essentially letting the bacteria kind of break down the meats and stuff like that, so that you're left with just a collection of bones that you then have to piece together to make a snake skeleton. It's a pain in the butt, but I kind of want to do it just to see if I can do it. But let's see. So 19 snakes. Most of my snakes. Whoa, my cat just failed. She tried to jump on the table and everything fell off. Not surprised. Not her best moment. Okay, so most of my snakes are. We decided when we started our business that I wanted to do. I wanted to focus on Texas native snakes and native North American snakes. So you're not going to ever see a Burmese python in my snake collection because Burmese pythons are not native to North America. Same thing with like boa constrictors and some of the more common like ones that you see at reptile shows and stuff like that, like the big ones that seem to draw people and like, oh my god, there's a 20-foot snake. Yeah, I number one, I can't have a 20-foot snake here. The city that we live in actually has city ordinances preventing people from owning snakes above a certain size and specific species of snake too. So like legally, I can't own any venomous snakes or any pythons or boas over 8 feet where I live. Unless I get an exception from the city, which right now would be impossible because of the way things are. So let's see. I feel bad interrupting here. Just checking Twitter. Oh, hey, hi, how's it going, Owl? Oh my God, Owl's here, yay! Let's see. Let's see. So the Trans-Pecos. So Max has asked the Trans-Pecos rat snake. Oh, it is currently still in my freezer. I have not had a chance to with the way that everything has gone recently. I have not had a chance to mess with it. So I've put it in my freezer, frozen it until I can actually get around to skinning, tanning, and breaking the stuff down. Essentially, it amounts to putting the body parts in my backyard in jars and letting it just decay naturally. Um, it's kind of gross and it's going to smell really bad, but hey, at least it's getting used. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Are this cats cool with snakes? So my friend Craig is asking, are cats cool with snakes? My cats love snakes. They love to play with snakes. They love to play with snakes until they die. So needless to say, I cannot let the two mingle. So anytime that I have a snake out, I have to either lock my cats up or just keep an eye on the cats and make sure they don't bother the snake. Um, Really, that's about it. Now, granted, we actually had this happened a long time ago. So, when I first got into snakes, so when I moved to Texas, I volunteered at a local museum, and they as an animal care volunteer, and they had a very large collection of native reptiles and native and non-native reptiles, and I helped essentially. So I cleaned out enclosures, I fed the animals, took care of them. That was really fun. And one of the animals there ended up being getting too old. So it was too old. It was a snake that was too old to work as an animal ambassador anymore. So I adopted it, and I had that snake until it passed away just a few years ago. And we determined when we took her to the vet, her name was Rusty, and actually our logo is Rusty, my first corn snake, curled up on top of a amethyst geode. And we took Rusty to the vet, and well, listen to me talk. From what the vet says and from what the museum said, that snake was almost 30 years old when she died, and she died of cancer. When she 1 year in brumation. So brumation is snakes are ectothermic. So when snakes, so like during the winter when it gets colder, snakes will kind of go into a torpor. They'll slow down. They will. Their metabolic processes will slow down as well. They don't go to sleep like mammals do, but they just kind of slow down. And so every year, Rusty, I would brumate Rusty during the winter months, because it just snakes seem to tend to feed better. At least in my experience, they tend to feed a little bit better when you have them do their natural like cycles. My cat has decided to lay down near my computer.
Let's just
Stop.
deal with that.
During brumation, thank you, Morgan. During brumation, she developed cancer, and of course, because brumation can last, I think did a three. I usually do about 3 month brumations. I didn't notice it until it had already progressed. So it started off as a big lump near her spine. I didn't notice it, and I checked on them. You know, when you check on snakes and brumation, you're like, you look in there, you see if they're moving around. Like, okay, they're good, but I didn't do any in depth uh, physical checks with the snakes until they come out of brumation. And so when I pulled her out of brumation, I noticed this lump. I took it in, and yeah, it was a cancerous growth that had grown right into her spinal column. So we had to have her euthanized. But yeah, that's I just kind of went off on a tangent, I realized. But yeah, no, so long and the short of it is that cats and snakes do not mix. No, they do not. And actually, I think I remember the reason why I mentioned that. So early on, when we had Rusty, we also had an albino rat snake, Texas rat, and that snake actually got out one day with the cats, and it was able to hold the cats at bay because of its using its just bad attitude. It essentially curled up right next to its enclosure and just kept the cats away by biting them. So yeah, so it just so happens that yeah, if the snake is defensive enough, the cats may not bother with it because they don't know what to do. But I don't want to take the chance of my cats hurting my snake, so I don't really let them. Like the reptile room that we have, we actually have one room in our house. It's all just reptiles. That door is always closed. The cats are not allowed in there at all, even when I'm in there. Let's see. So what other questions we got? Let's see, understandable. We do have BJ. Hey, how's it going, BJ? We actually have two hognose snakes, and I'll pull out. Muffin just ate, so I can't pull Muffin out, but I can pull out our baby hognose bacon bits. So yeah, we have two hognose snakes. We have a Western hognose snake, and we have a Mexican hognose snake. And the Mexican hognose snake is a baby, and he is so cute. Oh my god, you guys are gonna love him. He's this little tiny spicy noodle, and he is adorable. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. What other? Hey, Brett.
Yes.
Let's see. Yeah, bacon bits. We.
Donation,
Uh,
donations when you have bacon.
I have. When it comes to naming snakes, either I love naming them after food because I find it puts people at ease. It's kind of like why when I would teach, I would wear shirts like here. I'll show you my shirt. It says "Warning: May suddenly start talking about snakes." So like, when I teach, I used to wear like really funny shirts because I know my student it kind of was like an icebreaker. It would make my students laugh and they would kind of relax and be more involved in the lecture. So with the snakes, it's like a lot of people have actually it's there's research that suggests that it's the fear of snakes that a lot of people exhibit. It's actually an evolutionary fear. So it's not just something like, oh, you're being a wuss. No, no, no. There's actually a body of evidence that suggests that humans, because we co-evolve with snakes, there is there's essentially, yeah, we have a natural aversion to snakes that's actually kind of ingrained into our brain, like instinct. So in order for most people have to actually get over that hurdle before they are even comfortable being around snakes. So kind of like a rational fear. Let's see. So let's see. Oh, hey, Falcon, what's up? Let's see. How is the Western ribbon snake is actually doing really, really well. Dr. Giroux, our rescued Western ribbon snake. So if you guys, unless you watch our Facebook page, we this is a shout out to I have a friend, my friend James and his wife, Brooke, both run T-Rex Reptile Rescue in Texas, and they had a kind of a weird rescue. They were called to rescue a ball python and some venomous snakes, and it turns out that the boyfriend had them all put them all in the same box. So there was a ball python living with a rattlesnake and a copperhead. And after all the snakes had been rescued, as James was cleaning out the bedding, he found a little emaciated ribbon snake in the bedding in his trash bin. And since he wasn't set up to care for colubrids at the time, he contacted me and I took him. And when I got Jiro definitely was not a baby snake. I mean, he's a juvenile. I say a juvenile snake, but even as a juvenile, he was really underweight. Like he was only 20 grams when we brought him to the vet and had him do a preliminary assessment on him. And right now he's sitting at about 60 grams, which is pretty darn good. He's eating very well. Our garter snakes, actually, it's a ribbon snake, but ribbon snakes and garter snakes have very similar diets and care requirements. But the ribbon snake is doing very well. He is eating pieces of strips of salmon and chopped silver sides. Silver sides are smelt, I think. It's a type of fish, and whole foods like whole fish are actually better for them than like fillet of fish. Um, I've tried different types of fish fillets. He didn't really seem to like tilapia, and I'm not surprised. Tilapia is kind of quote unquote flavorless. Um, but he really enjoys the. He loves his salmon. Absolutely loves salmon, and he will sort of eat if the salmon is mixed. If the silver sides are mixed in with the salmon, he'll accidentally eat some of the silver sides too. So yeah, no, he's doing good, and I won't pull him out because he's not today because you know see how bodacious is kind of just chilling like he don't care. He's like the honey badger of snakes. He just meh, he's there. Um, I won't pull Jiro out because Jiro. I'm still working with Jiro on handling him. He is very much a ribbon snake. So ribbon snakes and garter snakes tend to be very flighty. It's a reason. I mean, people do keep them in captivity, but it's kind of like a reason why they're not more common in the pet trade is because of how flighty they are. Um, so when you pick them up, they tend to musk. They tend to just poop all over your hands, and they smell like water snakes and ribbon snakes. All their this their cloacal content. The scent of their musk is just it's awful. So let's see. What is a colubrid? And oh, okay, so there are different varieties of snakes. So Max, my friend Max, asked what a colubrid is because I have used that term before. And hold on, let me get a sip of coffee. You guys like my Jack Skeleton mug? Yep. There's there's not enough caffeine in the world. So a colubrid is a type of snake. So kind of like a boa, like boa constrictors are like families of snakes. Pythons are families of snakes. Colubrids are sort of like a family of snake. And most of what we have in North America, so in the U.S., most of our snakes are in the colubrid family. So colubrids tend to be they don't have heat organs, number one. So most of your pythons, vipers, boas, they have heat sensing organs in their face. So whether they're by their nose or in their jaw, um, they have those the ability to sense infrared, but colubrids don't. So essentially, bodacious. You see his little tongue flicking out. Yeah, I mean, if I move my hand, you see his tongue. He's like, oh wow, what did you do? Oh, I'm not prepared for your hand. No. Um, so these guys, colubrids use their tongue to smell and whatnot, and they can see really well with their eyes, but they can't see infrared. There's also some physiological differences too. So generally speaking, colubrids tend to be a little bit more slender, I guess you could call it. They tend to be slender. They tend to be more active. Let's see. There's a few other things too, but I'm drawing a blank on most of it. Suffice to say that colubrids are a type of family of snakes. So let's see. Oh wow, there's lots of people here now. Let's see. Lewis. Okay, so there are in Texas. There are let's see. Off the top of my head, there are definitely a few endangered species. A lot of the endangered snakes in Texas are ones that have they have very limited geographic ranges, even though they might be common elsewhere in the country. I'm pretty sure. Let me see. What's the one? Oh gosh, I'm drawing. I'm drawing a blank. I actually don't know of any. No, the the timber rattler is threatened, and so is the indigo. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I cannot think of the name of any endangered snake species in Texas. However, I can. There's also threatened species as well, and I actually do know two off the top of my head. The Texas indigo is a threatened species, and the timber rattler is a threatened species. So if you have threatened and endangered species, at least in Texas anyway, you're not allowed to harass, kill, collect, sell, breed threatened or endangered species. Um, I have two Texas indigo snakes, which are the only reason I'm able to own them without an educational display permit, is because I bought them from a breeder in California and I imported in the state. So if you have so Texas law is actually kind of weird in that as long as you are able to legally purchase an animal out of state or in state, the state really doesn't care about it. Like, for example, I don't even need permits to own my snakes, not until I get to 25 individual animals. Now, actually, right now with my snakes and my other animals, yeah, I need a permit for all these animals. But up until I think it's 25 individual animals or 5 or 6 of each of a specific species. If you meet those requirements, then you need a permit, and it's a non-game permit. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Timothy. I'm trying my best to relay information. If I'm talking too fast, please let me know. I tend to be a motor mouth. I definitely I'm very much I'm from New York, so we talk a mile a minute. We have one talking speed. It's on. It's so I've noticed that as I moved here, some people have a hard time understanding me because I do talk kind of fast. So my apologies if I'm going a mile a minute and you can't follow along. Please let me know and I will slow down. Um, let's see. Let's see. Oh, I'm so glad you love. So I used to teach geology at Collin College. So I don't. I've since moved away from Collin College. I have moved on to bigger and better things as me and my husband have taken to calling it. But my husband still teaches over at Collin College. So yeah. So I'm glad that y'all love my husband's class. He's such a good teacher. Oh my God, there he is. Look at him. And look at this guy. He's a great teacher. Oh my God. No, and I'm not just saying that because he's my husband. No, he's actually he is sort of like my inspiration when it comes to teaching. Like him and one of my Dr. Mitchell from UB. These, yeah, him and his Velociraptor statement. Oh, you're getting you moving around. You know, my hand is falling asleep because of how heavy you are now. Yeah, I might swap Bodacious out here in a minute. What kind of snake? So, would you guys like to see? I can pull out the baby hognose. I could also pull out. Let's see. I can pull out my indigos if you like to see one of the indigos. And the cool thing is, the indigos are babies, but they're about the size of Bodacious, which is insane. Yeah, actually, Tim Timothy asked about endangered and threatened species, why don't we swap out? We're going to swap out to either grab Zudi, Brett. So Zudi, I have two Texas indigo snakes, Zudi, Rebo, and Zudi, and yeah, no weird names. Me and my husband, when it comes to naming snakes, we're just random.
Because I'm not as skilled as you, I'm only going to pull one out and then there will be some dead hair because I'm not going to.
Okay.
So, me.
Alrighty, Bodie, you get to go with Brett. He's like, no. He's like, no, I don't want to go with Brett. There he goes. Whoop.
Cool.
So let's see. So while Brett is getting one of the two indigos, getting Zudi, let's see. Yeah, Falcon says that it's good that uh, Giroux's doing well and that he likes fish and he loves fish too. Yeah, I don't blame. I love fish as well. So it's actually kind of fun that I can when I buy salmon, what I'll do is I'll buy salmon fillets and I will cut them up into essentially like guppy-sized pieces, and then I'll freeze them, and so that I have essentially a whole fillet that I can kind of work through over the course of like a month or so. And it's really cool. So I have salmon for him, salmon for me, and I'm very happy with that arrangement. Kind of wish I could do the same with rats and mice, but I'm like, I guess in the case like if everything goes to pot and I guess I'm reduced to eating mice and stuff, I guess I will. But for the most part, I'm not going to do that. Hi, Morrigan. Morrigan is going to say hello. Hi, Morrigan. You want to say hello? This is my cat Morrigan. She's just hanging out. She wants he might be in his tube. Uh, check the cardboard tube. Hi. So this is Morrigan. Morrigan is actually all of my cats are rescues. So we actually found her walking along a highway. A couple of let's see. Hold on. Sorry about that. He is usually hiding in. Let's see. Where did he go? I know he is in here somewhere. Huh. Where? Okay. Huh. He should be in there.
Yeah, I'll give you the drawer. I'll take over.
Yeah, Brett's gonna take over for a minute while we find out. Woo! Hold on.
I understand. He can't, but he's not in there. So let me see what state we're in right now. You've gotten used to the fast chatter. Yes, I do actually teach at the same speed. So she's told you an incredible amount about snakes, and I'm not going to be able to. Hello, I'm not going to be able to keep up with that pace. We have, as she mentioned earlier, part of the reason why we actually name the snakes strange and funny things. Part of it is inside humor. The other part of that is because we want to not have an immediate barrier for people when they see snakes. They don't immediately freak out. If you pull out a snake, where was he?
He was just buried. I missed him.
Oh, you missed him. Okay. We wanted to make sure that when you see a snake, you don't immediately freak out when you say, hey, here's a snake and its name is Zooty. People go, why is it named Zooty? There's an obscure Babylon 5 reference for all of the science nerds in the room.
Yeah, he was just buried, and I missed him a couple times. So. Alrighty, so. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the help. Oh, Shh. God, this YouTubing thing is so weird. All right, so here we go. Here is one of Texas's threatened species. So this is a baby Texas. Not you. Hey Brett, could you take Morgan, please? She wants to play with
I'll
Zooty.
put her in the garage.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, see, Timothy, isn't that true? Because my husband does. We do sort of have one speed on when it comes to teaching. So yeah, it's we're kind of like yin and yang, or not yin and yang, but we're like essentially the same person, just different genders. Just about. It's kind of
Yes,
weird.
and we teach like the old hydrogen bomb footage with the palm trees flapping in the breeze.
Yeah, we essentially teach like Brett says that we teach like the old hydrogen bomb footage where the trees are just kind of and or the Maxell remember the old Maxell commercials, the stereos and stuff like that. BJ likes your shirt, Brett. So anybody so actually so here's here okay, so let's talk about indigos. All right, Texas indigos. You can see how pretty they are, right? So he is just and he was just born in he's about not quite a year old, but he's getting almost a year old now. But this is actually the largest snake in North America, or at least it will be once he's full grown. When he's about 3 years old, he'll be between 7 and 8, maybe 9 feet long if I'm lucky. Both of his parents, and the cool thing is, since I bought from a breeder, and the breeder, his parents, Zuti's parents, were both long-term captive bred snakes, or long-term. Actually, I think they were captive born and bred as well. Both of his parents were over 7.5 feet long, so I'm hoping that he at least gets that long, or at least gets that long. But these guys, so most snakes, when you think of a snake and you think about how they eat prey, most snakes are constrictors, or at least when you think of them as being constrictors. So they grab their prey, they wrap their coil their body around it, and they squeeze it essentially to death. Uh, Indigos are different. Indigos are sort of like the juggernauts of the snake world. They're People consider them a type of king snake, even though they're technically not in the Lampropeltis genus. They are still sort of like the king of snakes in North America. These guys, what they do when they hunt, they're very fast and they have very good eyesight and they're very intelligent. So when they are you are just going everywhere, aren't you, Zudi? So when they are on the prowl, when they see something they want, they chase it down, and rather than constricting it, they just grab it in their mouth and they thrash it around, or they just hit it at full speed with their mouth open. And so it's blunt force trauma and that ends up killing its prey before they swallow it, or sometimes they just even swallow it whole. I've seen not Zudi or Rebo, because all of my snakes eat frozen thawed rodents or lizards. But I do have a coach whip that actually does eat. We're transitioning her from live lizards to frozen lizards, and they hunt the same way. They just grab it and chomp it to death, chomp it or thrash it around, and sometimes they don't even bother, just swallow it head first or butt first or however it is that ends up in their mouth. Let's see. Yeah, indigos. Yeah, their maximum size. There have been reports of indigos reaching 9 or 10 feet. In Texas, I think the longest one was 9 feet, 9-ish feet, 8 or 9 feet. They definitely get big. So he is still very much a baby. But he does eat like he is a garbage can. He eats. What is he on now? He is on hopper mice, 2 hopper mice every feeding. So he eats just and he loves and he just grabs it and he chomps, and they have very very strong jaws. compared to other snake species. Let's see. Oops, sorry. There we go. Is that better? My mic had gotten displaced. So yeah, why are Texas indigos in danger or threatened? And that actually kind of goes with most endangered and threatened endangered species. The reason why they're threatened and endangered is because of people. That's the long and the short of it is. So these guys are native to South Texas. So like all the scrubland that they have down there. Hello, yes, I know you want to climb up there. They're native to all that scrubland in South Texas, and they need, because of how big they get as adults, they need very large ranges. So they need a lot of land. They can travel around and find food. Human activity acts to separate large parcels of land. So we divide it. Urbanization gets rid of it. You end up having little islands of native plants and stuff like that. In between these big vast seas of urban areas, suburban areas, and malls, mini malls, and highways, and so on and so forth. So these guys are threatened predominantly because of destruction of their native habitat, and actually really destruction of their native habitat. So as the amount of land that they have to live on gets smaller, the likelihood that they can actually find enough food to survive to breeding age is reduced. These guys are also victims. Actually, a lot of snakes are victims of traffic collisions. So, like snakes like to warm themselves on asphalt or concrete, and especially, and they tend to get run over by cars a lot. So, the more roads that are brought into areas as a result of urbanization increases the number of casualties as well. So they get hit by cars. They are you can't hunt them. So actually, that's kind of one thing. At least they are protected in that regard. You cannot legally kill or collect these guys, and that has helped a little bit. But for the most part, they're now I've heard I haven't. I'd have to verify this. I'm not sure, but I heard that they potentially might be removing these from the threatened list at some point. But I'm not 100% certain on that. Which is either a good thing or a bad thing. It either means the population has rebounded enough, or it means that times are changing and people want to change the law for personal selfish reasons. Let's see. So what other things? Yeah. Actually, these guys do sort of look like mambas, minus the venom. But yeah, they're really cool, and they actually have. I don't know if you can see it because he kind of tends to shy away from the. But you can see the eye markings that they have. But yeah, they have very very strong jaws, very big eyes. The big eyes help them to see very well. And the cool thing is that snakes, they can see color just about as kind of like humans can. They don't see as much color. Because they are, think of dichroic vision opposed to trichroic like humans. But yeah, he's just hanging out. And now it's really hard to see, but the reason why they call them Texas indigos is due to the iridescence on their scales. Now, because we're indoors, it's you really can't see the natural iridescence on his scales that much. But when you bring him outside, he is stunning. And as he gets older, that iridescence will develop more, so that some snakes will actually have sort of a bluish sheen to them when they're full grown. And he's actually giving me a little bit of attitude right now. I don't know if you can see that. Are you gonna see him rattling his tail? So he's telling me, he's like, yeah, like I'm unhappy. I'm not a happy snack. Well, he's got to learn. We're working with him still. So he's actually he's still really darn good. I mean, he handles very well. He handles much better than his sister Rebo. So yeah. Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. But he's still kind of doing his own thing. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if there's any more questions. No, okay, we're good. Hey, Brett.
Yes.
So, anybody have any more questions about indigos?
Is he too wiggly?
No, he is getting a little bit wiggly, yes. So I'm probably going to swap him out with.
Bacon bits?
Let's see. Yeah, we can bring out bacon bits. Just make sure he goes back into his the one that's labeled. Make sure I labeled. Hold on, just a minute. Hey, Brett, I'll get. Hold on. You do that. I'll do this because I think I mislabeled things.
Rebo and Zuni?
Yeah.
So I will temporarily take over. Any other questions as we are trying to figure this system out? This is the quarantine beard. Yes, you are correct, Max. When they got rid of the gray wolf in Yellowstone National Park, then they had not only an explosion in population, but because they had an explosion in population, they ate all the vegetation. They had widespread erosion, and it was destroying effectively all of the natural beauty, all the things that people went to see. They were getting flooding where they didn't have before. They were getting massive erosion, and then they went, "Oh crap, that was a dumb idea," and they brought them back. Will this get me extra credit? No, it will not get you extra credit. We figured it would be a fun Friday lecture cycle. Really? Uh, hey, you can't go out of the house, but at least we can bring the house to you. So who are you bringing in this time? Bacon Bits? Okay.
Because people wanted to see the hog nose. I know Max especially wants to see the hog nose.
Okay. No, it is not this.
Alrighty. Yes, no extra credit for you. Brett is the extra credit Nazi. So here we go. Here's our little baby. He actually looks when I hold him up to the camera, he looks a lot bigger than he actually is. He's super tiny. I mean, he is just a little tiny thing. But these actually, Brett, could you shut off the fan? I think they're that might be what's making them kind of skittish. Okay.
It's just on for the first time.
Yeah. Yep. Here you go, Max. Here's your little baby spicy. Here's your little spicy noodle. He is now. I don't know if you can see his face, but this is a hognose snake. And let's see if we can. My hand is like shaking to death. So hognose snakes have the tip of their nose. So what they call it's actually their nose scale, or it's called a rostral scale. And in hognoses, theirs is upturned like a little pig snout. And the cool thing is they actually use that nose to burrow and to dig up, like dig worms out of the ground and stuff like that. These guys are much more fossorial. So fossorial snakes are those that tend to be in contact with the ground or under the ground a lot more than, say, your typical snakes. So these guys definitely are much more underground snakes. They burrow into leaf litter and cracks and rocks and stuff like that. They're very, very adorable, aren't they? Look at this. Look at this little spicy boy. Now, the cool thing is because we've been working with him, he doesn't flare up. Like he's not really doing his normal. He's hooding up a little bit. Maybe if I turn it this way, you can sort of see his head. His neck is kind of flattened or looks fat. Hognose snakes, when they're confronted by a predator, so by a human, or they're confronted by something that could potentially eat them, what they will do, they'll go through several stages of defense mechanisms. So the first thing is to rely on the color. So these guys, if you look at the pattern, number one, they're actually also a rattlesnake mimic too. A lot of things are rattlesnake mimics, but these guys are actually they are mimicking prairie rattlesnakes and Mojave rattlesnakes, I believe. A lot of the smaller western species look almost identical to this. And they even have, look at their tail. Their tail sort of looks like, if I can get him to hold still, it kind of looks like a rat. It's trying to get, yeah, it kind of like, if you're looking at it from a distance, it kind of looks like a rattle. And so what they'll do is they'll rely on their pattern to camouflage. And if the camouflage doesn't work, so they freeze in place, rely on the camouflage. If something continues to bother them, what they'll do is they will flatten their head, or they'll flatten their mouth or their throat, and some people call it hooding up. So they kind of look like a little cobra when they do that. They'll actually flatten their neck out to make like a hood, and then they'll bluff strike. So they'll hiss, and they can actually I don't know if you saw that. See the little bacon bits jump there. So they can actually hiss pretty loudly too for their size. And I know when Muffin hissed the first time we got her, it startled me too. It was like hearing Bodacious hiss for the first time. It's a very ferocious sound when it's like just a few inches away from your face. So this little guy, these guys, they'll flatten their neck. They will hiss. They will bluff strike. So they'll actually kind of try to hit you with their mouth. They'll try to act like that they're biting you, but they're actually not biting you. They're not even opening their mouth and trying to bite. They're just hoping that their defensive attitude is enough to get you to go away. If you continue to bother them, then they go into stage 3, essentially, and that is playing dead. So they actually will play dead. They will flip over. They'll writhe around on the ground with their mouth open, their tongue hanging out. They'll vomit. They'll expel all the contents of their cloaca, so they'll poop all over themselves, and they'll just writhe around on the ground and then like they're dying, like they're in their death throes, and then they'll just lay still. And the purpose of this, at least seems to be the purpose of this is to essentially de-escalate the predator response. So predators, think about cats. Cats love moving objects. Predators are much more attuned to moving objects than they are non-moving objects. It triggers like movement, running from something. So, for example, like, well, you never run from like certain species of like for grizzly bears, for example. Grizzly bear, you run from a grizzly bear, it'll chase you, and it'll win. Um, it'll run your butt down and it'll eat you. Um, but these guys, by playing dead, it's believed that they are hoping to trigger or to de-escalate the predator response, so the predator loses interest in them. Like, oh god, I don't want to eat this dead, smelly thing that's on the ground. Or some predators, if you think about like birds of prey, say if a hawk snatched this little guy off the ground, if it plays dead and the parent, like, say, drops the food item off at the nest for the babies to mess around with, there's a chance that the babies won't eat it right away, and that they could potentially come back to life and escape. So that's their little defensive mechanism. Absolutely love, and it's really cool. You should, if y'all really want to see it, I'm not gonna pester him to the point that he does it, because that's actually I remember when I was at one of the reptile shows I went to, was one of the vendors was actually doing that. They were harassing one of their hog noses enough that it actually started doing that. It's like, no, that's not cool. So I'm not going to harass him enough that he thinks he's going to die and he's going to do that. But look at that! Look at that little nose! Look at that little nose! These guys in the wild, they're actually frog and toad eaters for the most part. So they have very wide. It doesn't look like it, but they can actually open their mouths really wide, and they can eat. Like, he could probably eat a small frog. I mean, something that's much wider than his body or his head. It doesn't look like it, but he can pound some pretty big stuff. Like, he's eating right now. He's eating baby button quails. So little, they're very tiny. Button Like full grown button quails are really small. Baby button quails are about the size of a pinky, but they have a lot more calcium than pinkies do. That's why, and a lot of snakes tend to go for birds or chicken chicks. They actually tend to like those better than rodents. And it's going to depend on the species, but I know that like ball python that I'm watching uh, prefers those opposed to rodents, and a lot of my rodent eating snakes tend to prefer birds to mice and rats. So let's see. How old is Bacon Bits? Bacon Bits is only goodness. We got Bacon Bits in. I would say Bacon Bits is at most a month and a half old. He's very small. Now, granted, Mexican hognoses do not get very big, and he's a male too. So with hognose snakes, the males and the females are sexually dimorphic. So the males will actually be smaller, about half the size of the females, and that is true also for Mexican hognoses. So he is gonna maybe get a little bit longer, but he's not. I mean, he's probably gonna probably double in size, but that's gonna be it. And now, if I were to bring out Muffin, like I said, I'm not going to bring out Muffin because she just ate, but Muffin is about the size, is about easily 7 times this size. She's a full grown Western hognose. She's about 8 years old. And she's chunky too. She's also really cute and fat. I love it. But then again, these guys are kind of heavy bodied anyway. So when you say they're fat, that's just how they look. Let's see. Let's see what other questions we got. So Bacon Bits, yeah, month and a half old, about maybe 2 months old. Because I'm not sure how long Stu had them. Because the guy that I bought, so I bought Bacon Bits, Muffin, Firestar, and my gray banded king snake. I bought them all from the same breeder, and what he does is he actually gets them started on various food items, because these guys can be very picky when they're babies, because when they're babies they're programmed, and they're programmed to eat mostly lizards and frogs. And so if you try to offer a newborn baby hognose a pinky mouse, it's probably not going to eat it, because it doesn't. Its brain's like, this isn't food. So what a lot of breeders will do, at least good breeders, they will get their babies started and well established on rodents, on a rodent diet, before they actually offer their snakes for sale. And that's why I keep buying from the same breeder, because he I know for a fact that he's actually taking the time to feed his babies and get them established before he sells them. So yeah, he might be a bit more expensive than, say, other breeders, but at the same time, I know for a fact these animals are very, very well cared for. Let's see, what are the different variations of snakes? So I guess trying to think of a that's a very big and vague question. So Well, broad categories of snakes. Maybe that's what. So boas, vipers. You got boas, vipers, pythons, colubrids. You also have some of the small, like the blind snakes, thread snakes. There's a lot of variability. There's also probably sea snakes. I think they're in their own category too. Um, Honestly, when it comes to like the taxidermy, I'm not as say familiar with taxidermy. Not taxidermy. Taxonomy. That's it. Taxonomy. That's the word. As I am other things. But there's a bunch. There's a lot of different families of snakes, and they all essentially have their own unique adaptations that essentially allow us to divide them into their own separate groups and whatnot. Let's see. Yeah, Max, you can definitely tell he's chilled out quite a bit because I've been handling him not every single day because Hognose is I don't want to overstress him out. And when I feed him, I don't want to handle him for a couple days. But yeah, no, he's definitely chilled out quite a bit. Let's see. Yes, actually, grizzly bears. They recommend if you are being chased by a grizzly bear to actually hold your ground. Because if you run, the grizzly bear will chase you, and grizzly bears can reach 40 miles an hour in a sprint. You're not going to be able to outrun it. It's actually
They call that bluff charge.
yeah, it's bluff charging. Actually, grizzly bears will bluff charge you because they. I mean, you're still kind of small and squishy, and the bear knows that. But the bear also, like, if imagine if you have like, for example, say if I'm confronted with a cool, like a huge alien being that seems dead set on wanting to hurt me, right? If I don't run, if I just sit there and stare at it back, or maybe walk towards it, what do you think the alien's going to think? Like, what the hell? Why is this creature so emboldened to approach me? Isn't it afraid of me? I'm so much bigger than it. So grizzly bears are kind of like that. So grizzly bears, and actually a lot of predators too, if you act defensive, and think about it, that's what snakes do. Even though snakes, so like when a snake is confronted by a person in the wild, even though the snake knows it cannot possibly fight back against the person, like it knows the person, a human being, is too big and too powerful to be overpowered, they'll still hold their ground. Rattlesnakes rattle. Rat snakes will hiss and strike and rattle their tail. Yeah, exactly. So what they're doing is they're essentially trying to make you think that attacking them is not worth time and energy that you would expend. So like there's something you could potentially hurt yourself. So like if an animal holds its ground against a small animal holds its ground against you, you're kind of like, huh, I don't know, why is it holding its ground? So let's see.
Never charging a grizzly bear though.
Okay. So Tiffany asked if the scales definitely look different. So yes, scales. Oh, this is like its own lecture. The scales, snake scales, are very specialized. So, and it a lot of times depends on the environment that the snake is from. So these guys, if you could, I can't zoom in on the scales, unfortunately, but these guys have scales that have a almost like a blade that runs down the back. It's called a keel. So kind of like the keel of a boat. So every scale has this little tiny ridge that runs down the middle of it. And in some snakes, now some people actually it's kind of interesting. There's bodies of literature that suggest one thing and or another. So it's kind of like you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like that, what I'm about to say is not may not exactly be 100% accurate, but at least according to what I've read, people believe that keels on snake scales can serve several functions. So some it could be it could help with quote unquote aerodynamics or hydrodynamics. So like when a snake is swimming, a lot of water snakes have keeled scales that can actually potentially help them swim. Some snake species, like African, I think they're called African egg-eating snakes, that they actually their defensive mechanism is to coil up and they have keeled scales as well, and they rub their scales against one another to make a rattling sound that is kind of really shocking when you hear it. But some people most people are in the camp that the scales, the keel on a scale, is actually to help with camouflage. So, for example, with if you look at if you were to say take an individual snake scale, so like say a snake scale from my indigo versus a snake scale from this, and you were to hold it up to a light source, the indigo scale is a lot more shiny than the other one. However, if you were to add a keel to the indigo scale, it wouldn't reflect light as well as it did without the keel. So a lot of these guys, the hognose here is designed to kind of blend into a dusty, rocky, arid environment. And if its scales were really shiny, it would actually stand out a lot more than it would if it were. It would maybe stand out a lot more against the desert pavement than if it had the keel in the first place. So that's kind of neat. Let's see. Yes, hognoses are indeed adorable. They are. I would definitely say they are. It depends. Some people will argue this. If you're going to own a snake, I'll tell you that hognoses are. They can be very picky. They also have some unique quirks, some behavioral quirks that you have to be aware of. So, like, hognoses are known for just going on hunger strikes. So they will just be like, one day, I don't feel like eating anymore for 3 months. And if you can't deal with the stress of that, so like if you have, you want the best for your snakes, you want to care for your snakes, and all of a sudden you have the snake who is eating really, really well, and then all of a sudden they're like, nope, don't want no more food. And it's not like and they'll actually do this. So a lot of snakes will stop eating around winter time. So like into fall, as it starts transitioning to like fall, like so October and stuff. Here in Texas, the snakes will start to refuse food because during brumation, we almost fell there. During brumation, because the snake's metabolic functions are diminished, they can't digest food as well. So they actually start refusing food, and they go kind of on a hunger strike before brumation. Otherwise, the food, anything that they ate, would kind of just sit in their gut and ferment and make them sick and possibly kill them while they were brumating. So all of my snakes that I have brumated, kind of toward actually even the ones that I don't. Oh, hey, he was doing a bluff strike. That was a bluff strike. Are we done? So actually, I might put him back. Would you mind putting him back, Bear? Oh, actually, look at he's hooding up. You see that? See, he's flattening. He's kind of flattening his face. I don't know if you can see that. Oh yeah, because he saw Brett. Look at him flatten his face. So yeah, would you mind putting him back? I think he's good. I think he's done.
If he's cool with me.
Oh, he's fine. He'll be fine. And grab.
Where's his is labeled?
His is labeled and it's also out on the counter.
On the left hand side.
Yeah, you can't miss it. It's a little tiny tub. Grab. Yeah, sure. But yeah, huh? Where's what, babe?
You're talking this container right here.
Yeah, the little plastic one. Yep.
Where's the lid?
It should be on the table or on the ground next to it. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I see.
Okay, he found it. Good. So yeah, so if you're gonna get a hognose, they do make good snakes. The cool thing is they don't get very big. So if you want a snake that doesn't get big, so a lot of people, and this is kind of this is my PSA for the day. If you're gonna get a snake, you better darn well do your research ahead of time, because a lot of people, and I've actually talked to people in like pet stores and stuff. A lot of people like will impulse buy an animal, so they will see it like, oh, it's so cute, and I want it, and so they buy it, and they have no idea how to take care of it. And then a lot of times the snake dies because it's at the wrong temperatures. It's not being fed the proper diet. It's people drop it because they're not expecting. Sometimes snakes have attitude to give them attitude. So it's all about really knowing the animals that you're going to buy. So if you ever want to get a hognose, again, they make great snakes, but you have to make sure that the snake that you're buying is well established. Because if you get a baby, sometimes some breeders will sell things what they call out of the egg or out of egg. If you get a snake that is directly out of the egg, you are going to have to switch it over to a rodent diet, unless you which is very difficult. Well, it's not difficult. It's just challenging if you've never had to do it. We have a coach whip right now that we're actually kind of doing that, and we've had Moonracer for almost a year now, and she still has not transitioned to rodents yet. She has transitioned to frozen thawed lizards, so she's not taking live anymore, but we're still trying to work with her, transitioning her to a rodent diet. Reason I'm transferring this, kind of an aside, but the reason I'm transferring her to a rodent diet is more so because it's convenient. It's sometimes it's really hard to get supplies of frozen lizards. And I don't want to just go outside and collect like geckos that are outside on my porch because they could have potentially parasites that I don't necessarily want to be transmitting to my collection. And then they're also, the geckos are fulfilling they're fulfilling a niche by eating all the spiders and ants and shit that I don't want in my house. So let's see what other let's see, question. Cool. You're welcome, Tiffany. How are Sora and Rika? Sora. Oh, actually, let's do. Can you want to pull out Sora? Okay, so I'll get Sora out because Brett gave me this look like, oh no. So Sora and Riku are currently my two biggest snakes. They are Texas rat snakes. So they are a sort of a subspecies of Western rat snake. So they are it's a unique color variant that we have in Texas. So Western rat snakes as a whole, they tend to be kind of dark colored snakes. They tend to have a dark colored back with blotches, dark colored head, and then a light colored belly. The Texas indigo, or the sorry, not Texas, the Texas rat snake has oranges and browns, like kind of an olive colored scales in between its splotches. So it tends to be a little bit lighter in color. And they are actually the one of the biggest, not the biggest, but they're one of the biggest snakes in Texas, and they're also the one that's most likely to be mistaken for a rattlesnake. They're also the one that you're probably most likely to find in your backyard or crawling up your pipes or up your brick walls or in your trees, eating birds and stuff like that. So yeah, let me go get him out. Brett will entertain you. Yeah, Brett's going to tell you a story about one of our snakes called Bitey that we used to have. So here, I'm passing this off to him.
When we were volunteering at the Hurd Science Museum a while ago, they had an albino, they still have an albino Texas rat snake that didn't, I don't know if at the time it had a name, but they were trying to get it, since Texas rat snakes tend to be aggressive, right? To be mistaken for rattlesnakes because they're just so aggressive. They were trying to get it more likely able to be handled because there were a lot of people at the museum that didn't like cleaning its cage because they were afraid of it and because it tends to be aggressive. So this albino rat snake we had rehomed, or we were sort of fostering for a while. And what we had is this snake, and we named it Bitey because it was bitey. You'd go try and pick it up and it would try and bite everything. So when we had it here, one day I get home, and the moment I come to the front door, all the cats greet me. And I went, okay, I don't know what's going on, but there's a problem. So I get into the house and I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't see anything, but all the cats are like, we did a bad thing. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I can't see whatever. And I look over at Bitey's cage and it's empty. And I'm like, now I'm looking around like you did a bad thing and I don't know where Bitey is. And so I'm looking everywhere around the house, can't find him. And then I just happen to peek around his enclosure and he's sitting there and he's looking at me like, I have had a bad day. And he goes, don't touch me. And I call up Shannon because she was at work at Frisco at the time. And I call her up and I said, what do I do with this snake? She goes, what is he looking like? He's looking like murder. And she goes, okay, just leave him. So eventually we let him go. We left him go. We sent him back to the museum, and they had their own incidents with them because Bitey was an aggressive snake. Because he had figured out that if you didn't latch the cage exactly right, he could wedge his body between the lip and the roof, and he'd inflate his body and he'd pop the lid off. So we didn't realize that a snake would do that. They are very smart, and he was able to effectively open doors, but he would just sit there and he'd just push up his body and he could pop the lid off of the enclosure. So there were several times they came over and they were like, where did Bitey go? And Bitey was nearby. So Bitey was a snake that we basically never handled because he was just aggressive. So I understand the entire point are these things, so I'm not going to sit in front of here any longer.
Thank you. Can you adjust the? You have to adjust my head. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So this is actually Riku. Sora is in blue. Can you guys? Okay. Sora's in blue right now, so I can't actually use Sora. Oh, blue is sorry. Me and my fancy jargon. So blue is so snakes as they grow. So actually, snakes grow out throughout their lives. But the thing is, snake skin does not grow with the snake. So what they end up doing is they actually shed their outermost layer of skin every depends on the snake species and the age. But my big snakes, so like Riku here, usually sheds about once every 5 or 6 months, and when they go into shed, they tend to get a bluish. Their color changes, and their eyes actually kind of adopt a bluish gray sort of color as the essentially as the outermost epidermis starts to separate from the new one forming beneath it. And it's essentially it's like a little layer of essentially it's a layer of fluid between the two different layers of skin, the old one and then the developing one. And when snakes are in blue, they cannot see very well. And so a snake that is in blue is more prone to bite and strike and be defensive than a snake that is not in blue. So he is not in blue. Now, granted, he is a little bit more misbehaved. He's much more misbehaved than his brother Riku. I mean, his brother Sora, but actually, I kind of name the naming. Sometimes when I name my snake, sometimes it comes back to sort of bite me in the butt. This guy is kind of dark and brooding and a bit mopey sometimes, and got a bit of an attitude. So I actually named him very well because yeah, actually, we got these. Shout out to James again from T Rex Reptile Rescue. We actually adopted him and Sora from them. And Sora actually is super sweet. Like Texas rat snakes are normally known for having just an attitude problem. Like they will when confronted, the first thing they do is go into strike poses. They will strike and hiss and rattle their tail and musk and everything. It's amazing. So this guy here, just to show you how big his head is, I don't know if you can see it, but his head is huge. He's big. He's about 5.5. He's 5 feet 4 inches long. Whereas Sora is about 5'6". It's really hard to measure a snake because they like to wiggle, but definitely over 5.5 feet, almost 5.5 feet, both of these guys. So what was I talking about? Hi, Professor. I love that. Hi, Professor Burkett's wife. Hi. It's nice to meet you, Professor Burkett's student. But yeah, so let's see. Naja, is that? I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Naja. So we're asked if I was ever afraid of snakes. What made me comfortable? So actually, no. I was the kind of kid growing up. If my mom were here, she'd tell you I was the kind of kid that'd go off into the forest, disappear in the forest, and bring back things like critters for my mom. And so we had land when I was a kid. We had about 2.5 acres, but it butted up against a whole bunch of other properties that no one really had. They didn't have fences, and people didn't care at the time. People didn't care that like your neighbor's kids were tromping around their property because they're like, who cares? They're just kids. They're having fun, whatever. So yeah, I would just disappear into the forest for an entire day, and I would come back with squirrels and chipmunks and snakes and frogs and toads and other things. That's just I've always been interested in animals, always. It's kind of odd since I have such a fascination with animals why I didn't major in in anything related to animals. I ended up majoring in geology opposed to biology or something like that.
Sometimes into hobby versus career.
Yeah, hobby versus career, as Brett says. So yeah, no, I love animals, love all animals, except for fire ants. I hate fire ants because I'm allergic to them and they're invasive and they just, oh my God, they're awful. I don't know if y'all have ever had to deal with fire ants. Like if you're in Texas, you have. If you haven't, they're the worst thing ever, and they're moving north because of climate change. So seriously, that's what they're doing. They're moving north. They're essentially decimating native ant populations. So while people are like, "Oh no, sugar ants. Who cares about sugar ants? Or who cares about harvester ants or pyramid ants?" A lot of animal species actually, like for example, the Texas horny toad. You guys have probably heard about it. It's the state reptile of Texas. They actually exclusively eat harvester ants, and fire ants are actually displacing them as they move north, and the horny toads can't survive if they cannot eat fire ants because fire ants are too aggressive. They'll just and they have venom. So let's see, whatever. So and I've just been comfortable with snakes, and now when it comes to handling them, that's a different story. So I've always loved animals, but really properly handling snakes, I actually didn't get good at until I started volunteering at the local museum. So when I was volunteering as an animal care ambassador, animal care volunteer. That's when I was exposed to having to take care of a lot of different species of reptiles and mammals and all kinds of things, fish, you name it. I've kind of worked with most things, except for like tigers and some of the exotic stuff. But yeah, I've worked with bobcats, I've worked with armadillos, I've worked with coatimundis. Coatimundis are really fun. Don't ever get one as a pet, but they're really cool. Ring-tailed lemurs. We actually had some ring-tailed lemurs at the museum for a while. I think we still do, actually. So yeah, I've worked with animals a lot, but it's just really getting in there because I mean it's different when you have a pet because I mean pets are I don't know maybe I'm
You understand its behavior over time.
yeah, okay, that's actually a good point. Brett said that you learn to understand their behavior over time, and it's actually so that like there's theoretical knowledge and there's practical knowledge. So you can read up on snakes until you can read every single book about snakes. Yeah, exactly. Blue in the proverbial face, as Brett said. But if but unless you actually have practical hands-on experience, theoretical knowledge may not be enough to actually keep animals healthy because a lot of times, like you can read something. A great example is, let's see, I'm trying to think of a good example.
Well, think about it this way.
Well, it's kind of like actually anybody who knows if you guys actually geology students, since I have some of Brett's students here, it's kind of like reading up about topics in mineralogy like cleavage or luster, hardness, specific gravity. You can read a textbook and you can see what the definitions are, but when it comes to actually applying those definitions to actual hand specimens, it's a lot different than rote memorization, like rattling off a definition from a textbook, because you're actually like your professor. Now obviously with the pandemic going on, we've had to switch to online stuff, but like had we done your midterm, your professor would have been just like handed you a chunk of calcite, for example, and said, what luster does this have? So then you have to know what luster is, so you have to have that theoretical knowledge, but then you have to know how to determine, to look at a mineral and say, oh, well, this has a non-metallic glassy luster or a non-metallic pearly luster or something like that, whatever the specimen happens to have.
It's also like it's also like having your own children versus watching somebody else's
Yeah,
children.
or it's like having children versus watching somebody else's children, that kind of stuff. So you definitely have, it's a different experience both ways. So, oh, hey, where are you going? Oh, he's looking at the keyboard. He wants to go to the keyboard. You want to go type? You want to go type on the keyboard? No, he's going away from the keyboard. Okay. So let's see. Let's see. Sora, let's see. Looks very shiny. Let's see. So yes. Okay. So Falcon asked a really good question. So snakes, a lot of people, because especially snakes in the Lampropeltis genus. So like your king snakes and your milk snakes have very shiny scales, to the point that they can actually look like they're wet when you see them in the light. Whereas Riku does actually, I mean, Riku here does have a slight shine to it, but some of his scales, like down the middle of his back, he does have keeled scales, kind of like the hognose does. They're not as, the keels are not as pronounced as, say, a hognose keel or a water snake, but they're still there. He doesn't really have them much on the sides of his body. So actually, if you look in the light, his sides of his body tend to be a little bit shinier than the back side does, which might lend evidence or suggest that the hypothesis that the keels are there to diminish luster, scale luster, is actually pretty credible. But yeah, they are. So he feels. God, the best way to. It actually, the scales almost feel like plastic. So if you touch your fingernail, so your fingernails are made of keratin. Snake scales are made of keratin. It's just that the keratin is a very thin layer, and underneath that is squishy flesh. So imagine kind of a squishy fingernail. It sounds kind of weird, but that's every scale feels like a squishy fingernail. And then in the case of the keeled snakes with keeled scales, there it feels like there's a little ridge or blade running down the backside. So like you rub it one way and it feels smooth. You rub it this way and it feels so. If you rub it like say longitudinal, not longitudinal, say perpendicular to their body length, you can actually feel a bunch of little ridges. I feel like I'm playing a guitar, like brum, brum, brum. Yeah, he's like, yeah, come on, human, really. So he's just kind of wiggling around. But yeah, this is a, so actually while I'm yeah, fire ants are terrible. Yeah, I see in the comments people like, yeah, fire ants are terrible. Nope, yeah, fire ants are awful. Good, they I don't like advocating getting rid of anything, but my gosh, I hate fire ants so much, and I'm allergic to them too. So if I get bit, I break out into hives and my throat swells shut. So another reason that I don't like them.
Fun things.
Fun things, yeah. Um, Actually, let's talk about since I've got Riku out. Look at him. Now his nose, you actually see the tip of his nose is a little bit weird looking. That's because he braided the tip of his nose. So we had to get him a special enclosure. So when we first got him, he was in our normal rack system. And it turns out that the grating on the top, so the ventilation holes in the top of the enclosure, which are kind of drilled into, they're pre-drilled into the metal frame of the rack system. He was rubbing his nose on those in an attempt to get out because he could see the light from the reptile room, and he wanted to get out into that, but he couldn't get through the mesh, obviously. So he ended up braiding the tip of his nose. So we had to get a special enclosure for him. Actually, him and a lot of my other bigger snakes. We actually also just made it a big snake enclosure. So he's in a special tub system that's a lot bigger than the one that he was in originally, and he has it doesn't have anything sharp or abrasive that he could rub his nose on. And it's actually healed up really well. And the cool thing is, snakes actually can regenerate. So like when they get when their skin is damaged, every time they shed, they can actually repair that damage to the point that years later you might never know that the snake had an injury in the first place. So with every shed, his nose actually looks a lot better, and it looks amazing right now. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's improved quite a bit.
You talked about the keratin
Let's
of
see.
you talked about the keratin of the scales. It makes sense for hardness because the hardness of the metal is hard in the scale.
Oh,
If you
okay.
put it in
Actually,
a
yeah.
plastic
So if we're talking about
enclosure,
hardness, Brett made a good point. Is the reason why the scale braids, even though they have keratin, and actually the scales on a snake are used predominantly for protection. So it's meant to retain water so that they don't lose, so they don't dehydrate. Um, so it's kind of like a water saving measure. It also protects them from abrasion too. But the thing is, though, because keratin it has a hardness of only like 2.5 on Mohs hardness scale. If he rubs against something harder, so like metal, it actually can. It's like it's like taking a set of car keys to a glass countertop. So he essentially is kind of like you could apply topics in mineralogy to snakes, which is kind of interesting.
but if we
Oh,
have
hey, Aunt Chili, what's up? My aunt just popped in. Hey, how's it going? It's good to see you. Oh yeah, they are very smooth. Definitely very smooth, especially the belly scales. I weirdly, let me see if can I show you. So their belly scales, what they call their lateral scales, are actually really smooth because these are their locomotion scales. So you actually would think that why would they be smooth if they use them for locomotion? But the cool thing is if you rub your fingers up this way, there's little lips, like the edges of the scales actually have almost like Velcro. So like when, whoop, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bump your face there. So like when they're slithering across the ground, they actually can move. This is fascinating. Snakes and their skeletal system. So while it is very simple, so they're just essentially a skull with a spine and ribs. They don't have a pectoral girdle. They don't have the pelvic girdle. Pelvic girdle. So like the shoulder, like anything that everything that we have as far as our shoulders and arms are concerned, our legs are concerned, our pelvis is concerned. They don't have that. They just have a spine and a head. But their musculature is so much more complex than human musculature because they have along their back. He doesn't. He's like, nope, I don't want you to see my back. Along the center of his back, they've got longitudinal muscles that follow their spine, and that controls like their serpentine motions, like their major body movements. But then they have localized clusters of muscles that actually allow for snakes to move individual pairs of vertebrae. So when they're crawling across the ground, they can actually move sets of vertebrae, like maybe 3 or 4 at a time, independent of another group of vertebrae controlled by a different set of muscles. It's absolutely fascinating. And so essentially, they just create waves, muscle waves, down the length of their body, and that essentially pulls sets of ribs forward and then the ventral scales grab the substrate, so leaf litter, rocks, soil, sticks, concrete, whatever it is. Essentially, they grab those uneven surfaces and pull forward, and then another group of muscles then reaches forward, and they keep passing that muscle. Oh, he wants to get my coffee cup. It's like, no, you can't have coffee. I don't even want to know what caffeine would do to a snake, honestly, especially him, because he tends to be irascible at best. Oh, hey. Oh, he found the light on the webcam. It's like, oh. Actually, what he's doing now, while he's doing it, this is actually something called concertina locomotion. So when a snake wants to go somewhere, what they'll do is they'll anchor with the back part of their body, and they'll reach out with their head. Let me see if I can get him to reach out to the top of my laptop again. You want to go? Yeah. So you see he's reaching out. So he's actually essentially supporting most of his weight, or he's like using my arms as an anchor, and he's stretching out with his head to grab onto a surface that he wants to climb up to. And that's called concertina locomotion. It's really darn cool. So snakes actually have 4 different ways of moving around. There's concertina locomotion, serpentine motion. So you guys are familiar with the snake slithering through the grass, that serpentine motion. They also have rectilinear motion, which is kind of like an inchworm. So when they're just moving their belly scales only. So instead of moving their whole spine, they're just moving their belly scales and they're inching forward, inch forward. It's so cool. If you look up videos of like pit vipers or boa constrictors, really heavy-bodied snakes, that's how most of them move. Whereas your thinner snakes or your more agile snakes, like your colubrids, tend to use serpentine motion depending on the substrate. And then you have sidewinding motion. So like if I put him on like a smooth tile floor, he's going to slither sideways instead of straight forward because he has to adjust how he slithers because it's harder to grab onto a smooth surface than it is a rough surface. So let's see. Fire ants. Would the texture bother a person who's super ticklish? Okay, so it would depend. I mean, some textures and some people. So, for example, I absolutely hate there's a texture that I cannot stand. And my husband has a cup, and I will show you the cup, and I will not touch the cup other than this. You know those hologram type surfaces? I hate that texture so much. I cannot like just thinking about like people like rubbing my hands across that hologram texture makes me cringe. Like I'm cringing right now. It's like, oh God, no, no, no. So depending on the person. So some people have especially people that are like hypersensitive to textures and stuff like that, some people may or may not like the feeling of a snake. So especially keeled snakes, I can tell you that a snake with keels feels a lot different, a lot weirder than a smooth scaled snake. So I would imagine if you have any sort of tactile like aversion, so like if you don't like holograms like that, you might not want to get a snake like that has keeled scales. So hog noses, maybe not for you because their scales they actually feel really sharp and really weird, and it's kind of like it doesn't hurt, but it's a weird texture you'd have to get used to. So this is kind of like we're doing research, going to actually a lot of there's one store locally that, well, not anymore because of the pandemic, but what they would do is if you went to the store, you could handle, like if you wanted to buy a snake, you could handle a snake, and they would be totally cool with you handling it just to see if you like, if the snake is in good health, if it's you feel comfortable holding it, that kind of stuff. um, Definitely do your research if you have any sort of tactile aversions. Definitely do your research to see if you may like it or not. um, if you have some kind of version, I might recommend a smooth scaled snake, because the smooth, to me, I don't, I mean, maybe if people don't really like that super glassy feeling, or plastic feel, you might not like touching a snake. But that's something. The cool thing is you can like for example, I don't do it, but if I guess if I really worked at it, I could get used to touching this. I don't like touching it because it triggers something in my brain, but I guess I could over time. So maybe that could be the thing too. I don't know if that answers your question. Let's see. Yeah, they can use the ribs to walk. Yeah, and then speed. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Snakes can now they don't. They're it depends on the species, but in terms of locomotion, like in terms of speed, like these guys actually can be very fast. Like if they're on a textured surface, so if they're on grass or leaves or concrete, they can move really fast if they want to. The fastest snake in North America is the coach whip. And I actually do have a coach whip in the other room. I can't. I'm still working on handling her, so I'm not going to bring her out because she's very wiggly. Um, but they've been clocked at 11 miles an hour in a sprint. Now they can't, unlike humans, they don't have the endurance to actually keep up that speed. So like they can just do short bursts of 11 miles an hour, but they can't actually maintain it for any length of time. It's kind of like crocodiles. You ever see videos of crocodiles? Like they're thrashing around, they're going nuts, but then eventually they just kind of just go slack because they're reptiles, because they're ectotherms. They have their bodies are designed for very rapid release of energy, but then they have to recuperate afterwards. So you see how he's kind of chilled out. He's chilled out because he's tired. He's like, oh God, I was just being all wiggly, like a rat snake, because that's what you are. He's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Give me attitude. Um, but now he's kind of chilled out. That's because he's tired. He has to get his energy back up, and then he'll be wiggly again. Let's see. Oh, okay. Owl asked a very good question. Riku, snakes are unbelievably strong. If you're like, for example, he doesn't look strong. Like he's just like, oh, okay, the maximum diameter of his body is maybe maybe 3/4 the size of my wrist, right? They don't look very strong. But say if I were to wrap around, actually, here's a good example. His brother, and I say brother, they're technically him and Sora technically are not related, but I call them brothers anyway because they're very they came from the same adopted them from the same person, and essentially kind of treat them like brothers, so to speak. But what? What is it? What do you see? Oh, he saw something. Oh, he's watching you, Brett.
Yes, he's watching me move about.
Yeah, he's watching you move around. A great example of this is when we first got when I was working with Sora and Riku one day. I found out that Sora does not like Brett. It's kind of weird, but snakes can actually, they're intelligent enough that they can actually have preferences when it comes to their owners. And so the snakes that I work with, these guys know me. The reason why they're not defensive is because I work with them every day. However, when it comes to other people, they don't necessarily know if they can trust other people. And so they tend to be a little bit more defensive around them. So when I was working with Sora one day, I actually had Sora kind of draped over my shoulders because a lot of my snakes like to sit around my neck because it's warm. They like to sit around my shoulders because it's also broad and they can kind of stretch their body out and use their coils to kind of hold on. They feel a little bit more secure than sometimes just kind of curling up in my hand like this. Look at that attitude. Look at that. He gonna get you. That's all. That's 100% Texas rat snake right there. Look at that. Such a good snake. He's actually being really good. Really good. This is surprisingly good. Scary good, actually. um, but yeah, I had him around my shoulders, and Brett came into the reptile room to ask me a question, and Sora got nervous and he constricted. So he actually wrapped his coils. So he wrapped his coils around my neck and just started squeezing because he was nervous. And I almost passed out because he was squeezing me so hard. And I told Brett to leave the room. The second he left the room, Sora chilled out and crisis averted. But yeah, these guys actually are very very strong. They can choke out a person they easily. It's effortless to them really. Because you think about it, in the wild, these guys, Texas rat snakes, are constrictors. So you see how he's getting wiggly again now that he's got his energy back. He's getting, ow, 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 that's my middle finger. Okay, there we go. My middle finger doesn't bend that way. Oh, thank you. He is very beautiful, and he is, like I said, he does have an attitude problem sometimes. When I take him out of his enclosure, I actually have to use a snake hook because he's very enclosure defensive. So if I were to just reach into his enclosure and try to pull him out with my hand, he'll bite me, and it won't just bite me once; he'll bite me like 11 times, and it'll all be in the span of like a second or two. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump you there. I'm just bringing your head back up so I can see where it's going. Yeah. But yeah, so they're very strong, and the bigger the snake, the stronger they are. So I see a lot of times there's it doesn't happen very often, but people who have like very large snakes, like reticulated pythons or boa constrictors, there have been instances where people have been handling those large snakes and they constricted and ended up killing their owner. And it's just something you have to be aware of when you have a snake. And so, like for that reason, I usually like I don't let people. So if I'm letting somebody, I would never let somebody hold Riku, number one, because he's a little bit too unpredictable. But say if I let somebody hold Sora, all right, I would never let them put the snake around their shoulders. None of my snakes go around anybody's shoulders other than my own because they don't know those people and they're more likely to tense up being around people that they don't know. And so for that reason, just for safety's sake, I don't let people do that. Because I see people that like I've seen like you have like snake shows, where people bring out like these big 20-foot Burmese pythons and they'll drape them over people's shoulders and stuff like that. It's like no. Now, if the people know the snake very well, then yeah, okay. If they know the snake really well and they know that it's not likely to actually freak out and strangle somebody, then maybe okay, they're cool with that. But I don't want to take the chance. So yeah, he's beautiful. Thank you. He is very beautiful. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else I can talk about with him. Actually, about these guys. These are very common in my part of Texas. Actually, they're common throughout the state of Texas. But these guys are actually really not adapted, but really they're what's the word? They're opportunistic, very opportunistic. They are really good at adapting to urbanization. So when urbanization happens, think about it, we create these really nice manicured lawns that attract rabbits and squirrels and garbage cans attract rats and stuff like that. So rat snakes, like this guy, like Riku, are to them an urban neighborhood is a big smorgasbord of yummy foods. And so that's what they're there for. And a lot of people are like when they're confronted with a snake that's this size in their in their front porch or in their yard, they think it's a giant rattlesnake that's going to kill them. But these guys are harmless. They are again defensive, but they are harmless. And if you were to care for one as like as a pet, these guys are actually make really good pets because they're relatively easy to take care of. They don't have special lighting requirements. As they get bigger, so like for example, Riku eats either full-grown, he eats chicken chicks or he eats rats, small or medium rats, depending. I kind of alternate as much as I can to give them a variety of food. But yeah, as they get older, they get more expensive to feed. You just got to be aware of that. Let's see. What else? Hey, Brett, what else do you think we should talk about?
You had mentioned earlier about how they actually breathe when they eat. Would you
Oh
like to tell us
yes,
that
yes,
story?
yes, yes. Oh yeah. So snakes, constrictors, especially. Actually, technically, all species of snakes do this. So he's a constrictor. So he'll coil around his food and he'll squat. He'll squeeze it to death. Do you know that the squeezing is actually not necessarily them breathing? It's actually causes them to go into cardiac arrest because their heart can't beat because of all the pressure on their chest. It's really cool. Anyway, so these guys when they eat, okay. So you notice a snake, his head is. I don't know if I can show like a, you can see how big his head is compared to my hand. Um, he can swallow. He could easily swallow a large rat if I want. So a rat that is, like one of those big fat rats that you see like at a pet store or something
Like
like
a
that.
big muffin.
Like a big, yeah, muffin-sized rat essentially. Food muffin, not snake muffin. So yeah, he could easily swallow that. And the cool thing is they have a very, very their skull, almost all the bones of their skull are not sutured together. So, like if you think about the human skull, for example, most of our bones, like in our head, like say up in here in our skull or cranium, and our jaw bones and stuff, they're all fused together. There might be multiple different parts of the bone, but they're fused together. Whereas a snake, the only thing that is like really coherently fused together is the brain case. Everything else is just loosely attached to the brain case with ligaments. And so when they open their mouth, not only do they have a long nose, a long mouth that they can actually just having a long face actually increases their gait. Much more than say a human, for example. But imagine a human with a longer snout. When we don't, if we had a longer snout, we'd be able to open our mouth wider because we have a longer snout. But snakes also have they have a quadrate bone. So when people say that like a snake when it's eating its food, they're like, oh, the snake it unhinged its jaw. Well, the snakes don't unhinge their jaw when they eat. What they do is they have a almost like a what do you call it? Like a it's kind of like an additional bone right near their the joint between the bottom jaw and the upper jaw, and that extra bone acts as like a double joint. So when they open their mouth the normal distance, but then the quadrate allows them to open it twice that distance. He's going to investigate your grading, Brett.
And they also can split their
Yeah,
section.
they're also their chin. There's a split there. The bones are not connected there. There's connected with ligaments, but they're not connected. They're not fused together. So not only can they open their mouth wider, but they can also open their spread their jaws. Like they can increase the gait by essentially flattening their skull. So that's a problem because snakes. If I can show, let me see his nose. Can you see his nose? So he's got two nostrils on his face, and those nostrils, that's how he breathes. The tongue, he does not breathe with his tongue. He's actually smelling. And the cool thing is, snakes can smell in stereo with their tongue. It's really darn awesome. Um, but they don't breathe through their tongue or with their tongue. They breathe with their nose. When they are eating and the skull is flattened, and because it's got like if he's got like a big rat in his mouth, he cannot breathe. At least through his nostrils, anyway. So what they do is they have so you know how you have your windpipe, right? At the very tip of your windpipe, so essentially right at the back of your throat, you have something called the glottis, which is essentially kind of the transition between your windpipe and the rest of your mouth, right? Their glottis is extendable. So when they're eating, you actually see this what looks like a tube come up out of their throat, and they can actually breathe through that tube while they're stuffing their face with a mouse or a rat. Um, and it's really weird to see. Like when you see look up snake videos, snakes eating, and look for that glottis. Look for that little tube. That's how they're breathing with their mouth full.
Explain them how their tongue works to smell in stereo.
Oh yeah. So Brett says I should explain about their tongue too. So their tongue is actually probably one of their coolest features. Imagine if our sense of smell, like so, when we smell, essentially we're breathing in the air, all right, and the air contains little particles that our brain can interpret as smell. So essentially, breathe it in. Those particles go past essentially little specialized organs that allow us to interpret smell. All right, snakes can smell individual molecules. So their sense of smell is so much better than ours. But they also have, because they have that forked tongue. So their tongue, if I can get Riku to cooperate a little bit, if you see his tongue stick out, you see the tongue has it's like a V shape at the very end. And if you can't really see it very well because of the webcam, but it's sort of V-shaped. It's a forked tongue. So you imagine every picture of a snake you've ever seen, draw the forked tongue and stuff like that. That forked tongue allows them to smell in two different directions. So they have an organ in their jaw. So if you were ever to see inside of a snake's mouth, where their palate would be, they actually have a depression there. And when they bring their tongue, so they flick their tongue out, they bring it back into their mouth and they rub the tongue against that organ in the top of their mouth. It's called a Jacobson's organ. And they can actually, because the Jacobson's organ is a paired organ, so it's actually got two lobes, so to speak, and each lobe goes to a different part of the brain. The snake can actually tell where a scent is stronger in its environment, so it can actually smell in stereo, kind of like how we can hear in stereo. So like if you hear somebody drop something in the other room, you can interpret the acoustics to figure out directionality. Well, they can do that with smell. Could you imagine being able to do that? So someone farts and you're like, oh God, Bob, I know it's you, Bob, or something like that. Yes, oh God, yeah. So Riku is not a king snake. Riku is a rat snake. So rat snakes they're predominantly rodent eaters. So this guy is going to want to eat rats and squirrels and rabbits and so on and so forth. King snakes, on the other hand, which actually maybe I'll pull out one of my king snakes. King snakes are predominantly snake and rodent eaters, not snake and lizard eaters. Sorry. And because of that, they'll actually eat other snakes, which is kind of cool. So yeah, if he were a king snake, yeah, any other snake anything that he could fit in his mouth that was a snake, or actually technically, if he can subdue it, he'll try and fit it in his mouth or fit it into his stomach, he'll eat it. So like he could probably, I think the biggest thing Riku would probably eat, like he couldn't eat a full-grown rabbit, but I would say like a jumbo rat. He could probably eat a jumbo rat if he was really, really pushing himself to. There are some the big constrictors, like the reticulated pythons and the anacondas and stuff like that. They're actually their bodies are designed to eat large prey infrequently, so they can completely outclass snakes like colubrids like Riku, because they can actually eat things that are so much bigger than bigger than their heads, bigger than they can eat. I saw a picture of, I think it was an anaconda that had eaten an alligator or something or a crocodile or something like that.
And then one that failed at its
yeah, there's other ones that fail. They fail too. They eat it while it's either still alive or something like that. So.
If you want to get a king snake, I'll tell
yeah,
you.
let's do actually here you should actually yeah, I'm gonna have to put Riku away.
I'll tell them the story of the copperhead.
Yeah, sure.
We'll do one more transition, and one of the stories that Shannon was telling you earlier, for example, if a snake sees a person or a bobcat or something, it will want to hold its ground because it will want to say, okay, I don't know what you are, but your desire to hurt me, I'm going to make you have second thoughts about that. They generally, think about it, biting is a defense mechanism, but it's also more of a last resort. A venomous snake, it takes a lot of energy to make venom. So venomous snakes, we see them in movies all the time. They just want to strike and envenomate. Well, one day I was at the Heard Museum at east side of McKinney, and I'd taken my environmental science class there. And one of the ladies at the Heard Museum was taking our students on a trail that most people don't get to go unless it's a guided trail. And so I'm standing at the back, like, teachers, the kids are playing. And so as my students are listening, I feel the girl standing next to me, a student standing next to me, she just goes rigid. And I don't ask why, I can just feel that. And I look down, and slithering across her foot is a copperhead. And the copperhead just goes across her foot, right across her shoe, into the grass. But it's going at a really slow pace. So it is enough time that the students are able to sense that something weird is going on behind them. Nobody said anything, but everybody just sort of turned and they looked, and it was already slithering into the grass. But the rest of the students started to freak out. And they went, oh my God, it's a copperhead, it's going to bite you. And they said, how did you not get bent out of shape? And she said, well, what was I going to do? The snake is just trying to cross the path, right? Like the chicken crossing the road. The snake is just trying to cross the path. If I freak out, then it goes, suddenly there's a problem. For example, we've worked with Shannon works with or worked with bobcats at the Herd Museum, and they were cool around her eventually as she worked with them. But if I would come in to help, because I would help with the animal care, if I would come in to help because I was uncomfortable around them, they'd pick up on that and they'd go, we're not too sure about this guy. And so their behavior would change because of my behavior. So in that situation, her relaxation, for lack of a better word, she didn't freak out and jump on a table, I Love Lucy style screaming. She just let the copperhead do its thing. And the copperhead did its thing. Had she freaked out, that's when it goes, I don't know what's going on. We had actually worked in their prairie trying to, as they were gonna, the city was gonna put a pipeline through, and we wanted to try and save some of the prairie grasses. So as we were moving those prairie grasses, we'd been working out in this one area for about 4 hours until we realized there was a copperhead there. And when we realized where it was, this one guy had been digging around this particularly deep prairie grass with long roots for probably 2 hours, which meant periodically his butt was about a foot off the ground as he's digging at this thing. And the copperhead was there the whole time. But because the guy didn't know and because he was relaxed, the copperhead didn't bother him. So it's when people freak out that other animals, huh? Yes, or try and pick them up, because at that point, if you, or try and kill them. If you don't know what you're doing, first of all, don't touch it. She said that. The second thing is if you don't know how to handle them, even if you know what they are, right? Don't do it. But it was one of those things. This is why for some of the snakes, I'm like, I'm cool handling that snake, but I'm not cool handling, for example, Riku that was just here. Mm-mm. Just because I'm not confident enough in my own ability and I don't want to pass that anxiety onto the snake, because then the snake's going to look at me and go away. So, and Riku is just a special case anyway. Mm-hmm. So we're going to show you Gandalf here.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I have been crowned. I need to get. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Gandalf. This is Gandalf, the gray-banded king snake. Ha ha. Yeah, it's a really terrible joke, but that's what we do. Guffaw. Yeah, guffaw. So yeah, this is a king snake. So king snakes they're called king snakes because they are the king of snakes. They essentially they dominate other snakes. So this is a gray-banded king snake. Gray-banded king snakes are native to. This is a gray-banded king snake. Gray-banded king snakes are native to extreme West Texas, so the Trans-Pecos area. So have you ever heard of like Big Bend National Park? That's where they're native to. And the cool thing is they're very remote. They live in like high elevation, rugged, craggy landscapes and stuff like that, where they hunt lizards and skinks and all kinds of stuff that might scurry around in, say, the cracks and rock and rock crack rock cracked rocks, cracked rock. Listen, talk. I'm like, oh my god, the coffee's wearing off, which is why I got my Coke here, because I need more caffeine. So yeah, these guys here, and these were one of my dream snakes. I was so glad when I let's see. Let's see. I got before I start rambling. I'm going to go look and see if any questions we got. Okay. Oh, I did ask that one. Okay. Let's see. King snake big bits. Oh yeah, the orange is really pretty. So the cool thing about these guys is they have a lot of natural variation in their patterns. So and we're not talking like specialty morphs or genetics like what people do, like breeding, like say uh I mean, it's similar. It's similar to morphs like ball python and corn snake morphs and whatnot. But these guys actually have just natural geographic pattern variation. So depending on what part of their range they're from, they'll either look like this, where they'll have really large orange bands on gray, or they won't have any orange at all. They'll just be gray and black. So this is called the Blairy phase. So this is a Blairy phased gray-banded king snake, and the other one, the one with the black bands, that's just a it's what are they called? It's an Alterna gray-banded king snake. But yeah, this is Gandalf. We got Gandalf as an adult because these guys kind of like He's got the cat. I love how curious they are. He is such a curious snake. Oh my gosh! Like if he sees something, he just always wants to be. He wants to see something. He wants to go and investigate it. Um, he's a sweetheart too. I actually use him for a lot of programs because he's just so gentle and tame and curious. And now he's gonna wiggle around, of course, and prove me wrong. But that's how snakes do. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. So yeah. So these guys here, just really darn cool snakes. This was one of my dream snakes. So when I first started, we first started the business, and I was deciding what kind of snakes I wanted. I was, oh yeah, when I first started things, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go exclusively Texas or a combination of Texas and exotic and so on and so forth. Um, what I was doing is I was looking at Texas first, and so I pulled up I have a field guide, like a field identification guide for snakes, and I was flipping through it, and I saw this one. I mean, and I got to tell you that the webcam doesn't do this snake justice. His orange is orange. It's like orange, like fruit orange. When you see it in person, it's absolutely stunning. What are you doing? Like a prison jumper, Brett. Thank you. Wow, Brett. Brett's making political is running his political commentary over there on the other side of the table. Yeah, Cheeto. So, anyway, so no, but yeah, no, like Cheeto orange, essentially, like bright orange. Um, Anywho, so these guys are like super awesome. Like they are they're really cool. They have a lot of unique adaptations. They're let's see. So these guys are they have the cool thing about king snakes, and one of the ways you can tell king snakes from other types of colubrids, they tend to have very small heads relative to their body size. So Riku had a small head, but it's still actually pretty wide compared to the rest of his body. Or like if you look at the size of the head compared to the rest of the body, it's a decent percentage of the body length. Whereas king snakes tend to have much smaller heads. And the reason why they have smaller heads is because they tend to prefer foods that are cylindrical in shape, i.e., snakes and lizards. And so they don't need to have a broad head. They don't have a wide gape to swallow something that's a smaller cylinder than they are. It's just kind of, it was one of the things I learned recently about king snakes. They're just really cool. Look at him. He's like, oh, what is that? What is that over there? He's looking at something. I don't know what he's looking at. He's got something in mind. Yes, Max is commenting about how yes, they are very pretty. Um, and the cool thing about this is something I didn't know until I talked with and we got him from the same breeder that we got bacon bits from. He I didn't know this, but the different phases that I mentioned, like the Blairy and the Alterna, they're not genetic. So if you were to breed, say if I bred him with a female that looked identical to him, the litter might actually be a combination of Blairy and Alterna. So you actually might have some that have no orange whatsoever because the pattern is not genetically passed on to their offspring. It's just random. So you can have equal amounts of. You could have an entire litter that is all Blairy. You could have an entire litter that's all Alterna, or you could have a combination of the two, even if the both parents are Blairy like him. What else? Kind of running out of. I think I'm running out of steam here. I don't know. Anybody have any last minute questions? Because yeah, we've been going on for almost 2 hours now. My throat is starting to hurt because I've been talking for 2 hours, and I love it. I love teaching. Oh my god, you have no idea how happy I am to be able to educate again. It's I didn't think I would honestly. My last job really wasn't fulfilling. Thank you, Brett. That's a good word. It really wasn't as fulfilling as I would have hoped. And again, it's not because I don't like teaching. It's just because the bureaucracy surrounding all that surrounding modern education is just you have to have you have to have a lot more patience for it than I do. You have to be willing to kind of just stoicism. Thank you. You have to really be willing to kiss butt and just deal with it. Um, I'm not that kind of person. If I don't like something, I voice my opinion and I get, like I don't, it's like, no, I don't need to deal with this right now because it's literally you are impeding my ability to work. So it's like, I don't, whatever. It's a waste of my time. So that's another reason why Brett and I have started up this business. So, oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Al said that we do it so well. We both just love, if you're going to be a teacher, and I remember this is kind of odd because when I was, remember, this is kind of odd because when I was oh, are you gonna go type? You gonna go type? Where are you going? He's going on an adventure. Whoa! Ah. Apparently, he's going to open up Microsoft Word. That's what he just did. We goodness, I forget what I was going to say. It's we I love teaching. I really do, and I just it's really hard, and a lot of people give teachers shit because you have some. It's kind of like with cops. You have some cops that are bad, but most cops are awesome. And that's the same thing with teachers. You have some teachers that are stupid and sleep with their students and whatnot, and they're bad. That's awful. Like that. You shouldn't be. If you're going to become a teacher, you shouldn't become a teacher for that kind of stuff. Um, so let's see. Actually, Falcon asked a question. Somebody, yes, actually, well, yes, I would say to err on the side of caution. So snakes do have salmonella is a salmonella. There's other zoonotic diseases too with snakes. I don't can't list them off the top of my head, but salmonella is one of the biggest ones. So it's if you have bad husbandry. So, for example, if you don't clean out the reptile cages, we clean out our reptile cages like complete nutter, clean out, sanitize everything once a month. And we spot clean in between. So, like if a snake poops, we go in there and we poop it, we scoop it out, and then we replace the bedding once a month. Um, if you do not care for your snake well, you can bacteria and other horrible things. Yes, you can. There are some things that you can get sick potentially from a snake if your husbandry is bad. So if you have a compromised immune system, you'd have to probably do a little bit more research about that because I'd have to do a little bit more. I'd have to do more research myself too, to see how like if say just basic good husbandry, if that's enough to say compensate for somebody that might have a weakened immune system. Honestly, I don't. Any beyond that, I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Any last minute questions? Um, yeah, actually, I think this is a good stopping point. Thank you guys all for showing up for our first live stream. It's we had 12 people, I think, at some point, 12 to 14 people at some point, which is awesome for our first one. We only invited a small group of people because it's kind of like a test stream. We weren't certain if technology and snakes would cooperate. Snakes would cooperate at all. Look at him. Look at that face. How adorable. I love his eyes. You see how big his eyes are? They're nocturnal, so they actually have much larger eyes than, say, at least compared to their body size, than Riku, because they hunt at night. And yeah, his night vision is. And if you actually, I don't know if you can see it, but his eyes now they're dilated right now. But when in low light conditions, so in high light conditions, he'll actually have cat slit eyes, just about. Oh, hi, hey, it's Brett's mom. Hi, Cindy. What's up? Yay! Oh my gosh, hi. Thank you for stopping by. We're doing snake lecture. Woo. What is my favorite snake? My favorite snake. Oh gosh, that's a toughie. I would say, my favorite snake. Oh my gosh. I'd have to say jelly bean. My first new snake, if that makes any sense. So the first snake. So when we started the business, the first snake we got was an albino corn snake, and I named it Jelly Bean because its head looked like a little jelly bean. And when I got it, it couldn't have been. She couldn't have been more than like 3 weeks old. She was really super small. Now she's almost too long now. So it's just amazing how fast they grow. Hey Brett, your mom says hi.
Yes, yes, I'm just talking
Um, yeah, no, I'd say Jelly Bean's my favorite. Yeah, Gandalf is a close second because he's such a little turd. I love him so much. He's super chill. He's super chill. I've been able to pass him around. One of the birthday parties we did, I was just able to pass him around to a bunch of kids that are all hyperactive and jumping around screaming, and he just doesn't care. He's like, nope, I'm a snake. I do my snake thing, and man, jumpy kids, me don't care. Yeah, baby Jelly Bean. I do have some baby pictures of Jelly Bean, and she was just so. I mean, when I first got her, when I saw like, oh my god, how am I going to feed this baby snake? But she took the pinkies like instantly, and it's amazing when you see how her head. We got Jelly Bean. Her head couldn't have been. It just goes to show you how snakes can, how the specialized skulls that snakes have allow them to do that, to eat things that are so much bigger than you think that they'd be able to eat. Now, king snakes. This kind of an aside. King snakes actually they don't have the same, since they don't have the same kind of gape, they actually are limited in the size of things that they can eat is a lot more limited. So they actually have to eat things that are more in keeping with the size of their, like the diameter of their head or their body than say a rat snake or say the rat snake, members of the rat snake family, or other pythons and boas and stuff like that. So Brett's dad is also coming to check out the live stream too. Our live stream is almost over. We're here at 2 hours, and my voice is starting to die. But I'll wait till Joe comes so I can say hi to Joe. But yeah, Falcon, Owl, thank you guys so much. Everybody, thank you guys for so much. Falcon, Owl, Max, BJ, I really appreciate all y'all coming out to support me. I really do. Hello, Joe. Um, it's really it means a lot. It really does, because this is kind of me and Brett taking a leap of faith, if you will. It's we have no idea if this is going to work. We have no idea how to like, this is our first attempt at trying to understand the mystery that is YouTube live streaming. So so this is yeah, Brett's like, it isn't wrong, right? So this is all very unfamiliar to us. The teaching part's familiar, but it's but like having to like there's a difference between handling snakes like that are not yours, like at a museum. It's like kids, like when I hang out with my nieces and stuff. It's like, I take my nieces to the aquarium, and then I can give them back to my sister when I'm done, and I don't have them on they're not my kids, so it's a different experience. Actually having snakes and having to take care of them every single day, opposed to caring for them when somebody else owns them. These are not the Hellier whales. Yes. Well, okay. I'm gonna stop rambling because, again,
She will wear out her welcome.
wear out my welcome. Yes. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. Brett appreciates it.
And we might do another fun lecture next Friday of some other.
Yeah, we might end up doing this since the coronavirus ain't going away anytime soon. We might just be doing this every Friday. Yeah, something every Friday. It may not be about snakes, but it might be it'll definitely be something educational. So it would be geology, environmental science, climate change, you name it. We might be just do like a lecture series where you guys can comment and ask questions and stuff. And then Brett is also working on uploading. He's creating lectures right now for his classes, and eventually, once we edit the photos in those, we'll eventually upload them to our YouTube channel. And eventually, once I also figure out more about how YouTube channels work, I will promote it and do other things to try to get visibility, increase visibility and stuff. So if you like what you saw and you think other people might like it, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, as every YouTuber says at the beginning or end of their the videos. Definitely. So Brett, tell Brett to say hello. You should say hello.
Oh, this is my parents?
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Come on. Come on.
Okay.
Your parents want to see you.
Hello.
Doesn't he look? Look at how scruffy he is. He's so scruffy.
This is my quarantine face.
Quarantine face. Yep. It's better than my quarantine face, which is a robot in lingerie. So. Everybody, people, no, seriously, like on YouTube or not YouTube, Facebook, everybody who's been Facebook, who has been there's like a thing going around where people have been asking to post like pictures of your quarantine face since salons and stuff are closed. So I just posted, every time somebody does that, I just post a picture of my OC in lingerie. Just yep, I draw robots in lingerie, in case you haven't noticed. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you guys. Let's see. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Y'all have a great day, and we'll probably see y'all next week. Alrighty? Bye. Brett, say bye. 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 Let's see, is that end? Yes, end.